The diplomatic chamber aboard the Nexus station fell silent as Queen Velterra's crystalline voice cut through the air like a blade through silk. Her 6-foot frame trembled with barely contained rage, her normally pristine silver scales rippling with waves of deep crimson that indicated extreme emotional distress among her species. The ornate headdress that marked her as sovereign of the Zephyrian Empire quivered as she pointed one clawed finger directly at Ambassador Sarah Chen. "Your child," the Queen hissed, her translator struggling to convey the venom in her words, "just called me a Motherf." She paused, her neural implants searching for the exact human term, a Motherf *, human. Sarah Chen, veteran diplomat of the Terran Federation, felt her stomach drop to somewhere around her ankles. Behind the Queen stood an assembly of the most powerful beings in known space. The Nexus Council represented 47 different species, all of whom had been negotiating the most important trade agreement in galactic history for the past 6 months. And, now, apparently, her 8-year-old son Tommy had somehow managed to insult the most temperamental ruler in the galaxy. "Your Majesty," Sarah began, her training kicking in despite the surreal nature of the situation, "I assure you there has been some misunderstanding?" Queen Velterra's scales shifted to an even deeper shade of angry red. "I speak 17 languages fluently, Ambassador Chen. I know exactly what your offspring said to me." The other council members began murmuring among themselves. Sarah could pick out bits of conversation in various languages, none of it sounding particularly encouraging. The Korthak delegate's tentacles were writhing in what she recognized as barely suppressed amusement, while the stone-faced Draknari representative simply stared with those unblinking reptilian eyes that had intimidated negotiators for centuries. Sarah's mind raced. Tommy was supposed to be safely tucked away in the family quarters, 3 decks below the diplomatic level. The station's AI had strict protocols about keeping civilian areas separated from official business. How had he even gotten up here, let alone managed to encounter the Queen? "Perhaps," interjected Chancellor Morvek of the Galactic Commerce Union, his forearms gesturing in a calming motion, "we should hear the full account of what transpired before drawing any conclusions." Queen Velterra's head swiveled toward the Chancellor with serpentine grace. "Very well. I was returning from my meditation chamber when I encountered a small human in the corridor outside the botanical gardens. The child appeared distressed and stated that he was lost. Being in a generous mood following my prayers, I offered assistance." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Tommy had always been curious to a fault, and the botanical gardens were his favorite spot on the station. She caught him sneaking out before to look at the exotic plants from different worlds. "I asked the child his name and parentage so that I might return him safely," the Queen continued, her voice rising slightly. "The ungrateful little beast looked directly at me and said, 'My mom told me never to talk to strange Motherf heirs.' Then, he ran away." Several of the alien delegates made sounds that Sarah had learned to recognize as their species' equivalent of gasps. In Zephyrian culture, being called a mother of any kind by someone outside the family was actually considered a compliment, implying wisdom and nurturing qualities. But, the addition of the human profanity had created a linguistic collision that the translation software had rendered as something far more insulting in the Queen's native tongue. "Your Majesty," Sarah said carefully, "in human culture, that phrase, while inappropriate for a child to use, was not intended as a personal insult to you specifically. It's a general term that, are you suggesting that I, sovereign of the Third Royal House of Zephyr, protector of the Spiral Nebula, am somehow general?" The Queen's scales were now cycling through colors Sarah had never seen before, a prismatic display of fury that was both beautiful and terrifying. The situation was spiraling out of control. 6 months of delicate negotiations hung in the balance, and not just for the Terran Federation. The trade agreement they'd been hammering out would open new shipping routes that could bring prosperity to dozens of worlds. Colonies on the edge of known space desperately needed the medical supplies and technology that this deal would provide. Ambassador Thrix of the Centauri Coalition, a being that resembled a cross between a spider and a flower, clicked its mandibles nervously. "Perhaps we should postpone today's session until this matter can be properly addressed?" "Postpone?" Queen Velterra's laugh was like crystal breaking. "Ambassador Thrix, I have been personally insulted by a member of the Terran delegation. According to the Accords of Diplomatic Conduct, I have the right to demand satisfaction." Sarah's blood turned to ice. She knew exactly what the Queen was referring to. The Accords, established 200 years ago after a series of diplomatic incidents had nearly sparked an interstellar war, gave offended parties the right to demand various forms of compensation for perceived slights. In extreme cases, it could mean the complete withdrawal of the offended party from negotiations. "Your Majesty," Sarah said, fighting to keep her voice steady, "surely the words of a child cannot be held to the same standard as those of an adult diplomat." "Can they not?" The Queen's eyes, large and multifaceted like a dragonfly's, fixed on Sarah with predatory intensity. "Tell me, Ambassador Chen, in your culture, are children not considered extensions of their parents? Do they not reflect the values and teachings of their households?" It was a trap, and Sarah knew it. If she agreed, she'd be accepting responsibility for Tommy's words as if she'd spoken them herself. If she disagreed, she'd be implying that humans raised their children without proper guidance or respect for authority. "Children learn by example, Your Majesty," Sarah said finally. "But they also learn by making mistakes and facing the consequences of those mistakes." "Consequences," the Queen repeated, her scales beginning to settle into a deep purple that indicated thoughtful consideration. "An interesting concept. And what consequences do you propose for this mistake?" The chamber held its breath. Even the station's normally humming environmental systems seemed to quiet as if the very air was waiting for Sarah's response. Through the massive viewport that dominated one wall of the chamber, Sarah could see the swirling colors of the Andromeda Nebula, a reminder of just how far from Earth they all were, and how much was at stake. "I would like to respectfully request," Sarah said, choosing her words with the precision of a surgeon, "the opportunity to have my son offer a formal apology to Your Majesty, and to demonstrate the respect that all humans should show to the leaders of our allied species." Queen Valterra's head tilted slightly, a gesture Sarah had learned indicated curiosity rather than agreement. "You would have the child face me again? After he has already shown such disrespect?" "I believe," Sarah said, her diplomatic instincts telling her she was walking a tightrope over a very deep pit, "that true respect cannot be taught through punishment alone. It must be demonstrated through understanding and personal accountability." The Queen was silent for a long moment, her scales shifting through various shades of purple and blue as she considered. The other delegates waited, some appearing genuinely interested in the outcome, others clearly calculating how this incident might affect their own positions in the negotiations. Finally, Queen Valterra spoke. "Very well, Ambassador Chen. I will grant you this opportunity. But, be warned, if your child shows me further disrespect, I will consider it a reflection of humanity's true attitude toward the Zephyrian Empire. The consequences of that interpretation would extend far beyond these negotiations." Sarah bowed deeply, the human gesture of respect that she'd learned the Queen appreciated. "Thank you for your patience and wisdom, Your Majesty." "Do not mistake this for patience, Ambassador," the Queen replied, her scales now a steady deep blue that indicated formal resolve. "This is justice. Your child will have the opportunity to redeem both his honor and yours. See that he does not waste it." As the session was formally suspended and the delegates began filing out of the chamber, Sarah felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders like a lead blanket. She had perhaps bought herself some time, but she'd also raised the stakes considerably. Tommy's next encounter with Queen Valterra wouldn't just determine the fate of his diplomatic incident, it could determine the future relationship between humanity and one of the most powerful species in the galaxy. The Queen was the last to leave, pausing at the chamber's entrance to look back at Sarah. "I will expect to see you and your offspring in my private receiving chamber tomorrow at the 16th hour, ship time. Do not be late, Ambassador Chen. And do ensure that your child understands exactly what hangs in the balance." As the massive doors sealed shut behind the Queen with a soft hiss, Sarah sank into one of the chamber's cushioned seats and put her head in her hands. Somewhere in the family quarters below, her 8-year-old son was probably playing with his collection of alien artifacts, completely unaware that he'd just created the biggest diplomatic crisis of the year. She activated her personal communicator with a gesture. "Chen to family quarters. I need to speak with Tommy. Now." Sarah found Tommy exactly where she expected, curled up in the observation lounge of their family quarters, nose pressed against the transparent aluminum viewport, watching the stars will slowly pass as the station rotated. His collection of gifts from various alien dignitaries was spread across the floor around him: a singing crystal from the Melodic Collective, a holographic puzzle from the Technosynthesis Empire, and, his prized possession, a small mechanical bird that the Korthak ambassador had given him, which could actually fly despite being made entirely of what looked like liquid metal. "Mom!" Tommy jumped up as she entered, his face lighting up with the kind of innocent excitement that made Sarah's heart clench with both love and dread. "You're back early. Did you finish making the space treaty thing?" Sarah settled onto the cushioned bench beside him, trying to figure out how to explain the situation without terrifying her son. Tommy was bright for his age, perhaps too bright sometimes, and she'd learned that treating him like an adult usually worked better than sugarcoating things. "Tommy, sweetheart, I need to ask you about something that happened today. Did you meet any of the alien diplomats while you were exploring the station?" The 8-year-old's face immediately shifted to the expression Sarah had learned to dread, the one that meant he knew he was probably in trouble but wasn't sure how much yet. "Maybe?" "Tommy." "Okay, yes. But, Mom, I wasn't trying to break any rules. I was just looking at the crystal gardens like always, and I got a little lost, and then this really tall scary lady with sparkly skin found me and started asking me questions." Sarah felt her stomach twist. "What kind of questions?" "Just normal stuff. Like what my name was and who my parents were." Tommy picked up his mechanical bird, which immediately began preening its metallic feathers with movements so lifelike it still amazed Sarah. "But, you always told me not to talk to strangers, especially weird ones." "Tommy, that weird stranger was Queen Velterra of the Zephyrian Empire. She's one of the most important people in the galaxy." Tommy's eyes widened. "She's a queen? Like with a crown and everything?" "Yes, honey. And, apparently you called her something that upset her very much." The boy's face scrunched up in confusion. "But, I didn't call her anything bad. I just told her what you always say about not talking to strange Motherf, Tommy." Sarah interrupted quickly. "That word is exactly the problem. But, you say it all the time. Like when Dad burns dinner, or when the news talks about the politicians on Earth, or when I know I do," Sarah said, feeling the heat of embarrassment creep up her neck. "And, I shouldn't, especially in front of you. But, honey, in the Queen's language, that word means something even worse than it does in English." Tommy was quiet for a moment, turning the mechanical bird over in his small hands. The creature chirped softly and nuzzled against his fingers with its metal beak. "Did I get you in trouble at work?" The simple question, asked with such genuine concern, nearly broke Sarah's heart. Here was her 8-year-old son, worried about her career while sitting in a space station literally billions of miles from Earth, surrounded by beings that most humans would never see except in documentaries. "You might have," she admitted. "The Queen is very angry, and she wants to meet with both of us tomorrow." "Will she hurt us?" Tommy's voice was small now, and the mechanical bird seemed to sense his distress, spreading its wings and making soft, comforting sounds. "No, sweetheart. She won't hurt us. But she wants you to apologize to her, and it needs to be a very good apology. The kind that shows you understand why what you said was wrong and that you're truly sorry." Tommy nodded solemnly, a gesture that looked almost comically adult on his young face. "Okay. I can do that. I didn't know she was important. She just looked different." Sarah wrapped an arm around her son's shoulders. This was the teachable moment she'd been both hoping for and dreading. "Tommy, do you remember what I've told you about the different species we meet here?" "That they're all just people, even if they look different from us," Tommy recited dutifully. "Exactly. And, Queen Velterra isn't just any person, she's a leader who makes decisions that affect billions of beings across multiple star systems. When you treat her disrespectfully, even by accident, it's like..." Sarah searched for an analogy an 8-year-old would understand. "It's like if the president of Earth came to visit your school, and, instead of being polite, you told them to go away because they looked weird." Tommy's eyes grew even wider. "That would be really, really bad." "Yes, it would. And, this is even bigger than that. The boy was quiet for several minutes, staring out at the stars while the mechanical bird settled onto his shoulder like a tiny metallic parrot. Finally, he looked up at his mother with those serious dark eyes that reminded her so much of his father. "Mom, what if I can't make her stop being mad? What if my apology isn't good enough?" It was a question Sarah had been asking herself since leaving the diplomatic chamber. "Then, we'll deal with whatever happens. But, Tommy, I need you to understand something very important. Tomorrow, you're not just representing yourself, or even our family. You're representing all of humanity to one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy." "That's a lot of pressure for a kid," Tommy said quietly. "Yes, it is. But, I believe you can handle it." "Do you know why?" Tommy shook his head. "Because you're human, Tommy. And humans have something special that a lot of other species admire about us. Do you know what that is? We're good at fixing things?" Tommy guessed. Sarah smiled. "We're good at taking responsibility for our mistakes and making them right. Other species might make excuses or try to shift blame, but humans, when we mess up, we own it, and we find a way to do better." "Is that why everyone wants to make treaties with us?" "It's one of the reasons," Sarah said. "That, and because we're pretty good at seeing solutions that others might miss." Tommy picked up the mechanical bird and held it close to his face, studying its intricate construction. "Mom, do you think Queen Velterra has ever met a human kid before?" The question caught Sarah off guard. "You know what? I don't think she has. Most diplomatic missions don't bring children. So maybe she doesn't know that human kids say dumb stuff sometimes without meaning to be mean?" Sarah felt a spark of hope kindle in her chest. That's actually a really good point, Tommy. Maybe part of your apology should be helping her understand that. And maybe I could tell her about why humans use bad words when we're scared or confused? Like how you explained to me that swearing is what people do when they can't think of better words to express big feelings? For the first time since the diplomatic incident, Sarah felt like they might actually have a chance. "Tommy, that's brilliant. You could help her understand not just that you're sorry, but why it happened in the first place." Tommy sat up straighter, his expression becoming more determined. "And I could tell her about how humans always try to protect their kids, even from nice strangers, because we care so much about keeping them safe?" "Exactly. You weren't being mean to her, you were just following the safety rules I taught you." "But I should have been more polite about it," Tommy added quickly. "Yes, you should have. But now you know better, and tomorrow you can show her that humans learn from their mistakes." Tommy nodded and then looked thoughtful again. "Mom, what's Queen Velterra like? I mean, besides being scary and important." Sarah considered the question carefully. In all their months of negotiations, she'd observed the Queen closely, looking for advantages and weaknesses as any good diplomat would. She's actually quite intelligent and fair, but she values respect and proper protocol very highly. Her species believes that how you speak to someone shows what you think of them as a person. So when I called her a bad name, she thought I was saying she was a bad person? Something like that, yes. But I don't even know her well enough to think she's bad or good, Tommy protested. "I was just scared and did what you taught me. Which is exactly what you need to help her understand tomorrow." Tommy was quiet again, and Sarah could practically see the wheels turning in his young mind. Finally, he looked up at her with an expression of determination that was almost frightening in its intensity. "Mom, I want to do more than just apologize." "What do you mean?" "I want to show her that humans aren't just good at saying sorry. I want to show her why she should want to be friends with us." Sarah felt her breath catch. "Tommy, this isn't about making friends. This is about diplomatic relations between entire species." "But isn't that the same thing, just bigger?" Tommy asked with the kind of simple logic that only children seemed capable of. "If Queen Velterra likes humans, then her people will probably like humans too, right?" Sarah stared at her son, feeling something shift in her understanding of the situation. All this time, she'd been thinking like a diplomat, focused on damage control and minimizing consequences. But Tommy was thinking like a human child, focused on connection and understanding. "What did you have in mind?" she asked carefully. Tommy's eyes lit up with excitement. "I want to give her something. Something that shows her what humans are really like." "Honey, I don't think a gift is going to solve this problem." "Not that kind of gift, Mom. Something better." Tommy held up the mechanical bird, which immediately began singing a soft, melodic tune. "I want to tell her a story." The Queen's private receiving chamber was unlike anything Tommy had ever seen. The walls seemed to be made of living crystal that pulsed with soft, rhythmic light, and the air itself shimmered with what his mother had explained were pheromone translators, chemical signals that help different species understand each other's emotional states. Tommy clutched his mechanical bird tightly as they were escorted in by two of the Queen's guards, whose silver armor reflected the crystal walls like mirrors. Queen Velterra sat on what could only be described as a throne, though it appeared to be grown rather than built, its organic curves rising from the floor like an enormous flower. Her scales had settled into a deep blue-green color that Sarah had told him meant she was in a formal, judicial mood. Her large, multifaceted eyes tracked their movement as they approached, and Tommy noticed that she was even taller sitting down than most adults were standing up. "Your Majesty," Sarah began, bowing deeply, "I present my son, Thomas Chen, who wishes to address the incident from yesterday." Tommy had practiced this part. He stepped forward and attempted the same bow his mother had performed, though he nearly dropped his mechanical bird in the process. "Your Majesty Queen Velterra, I came to apologize for calling you a bad name and to ask for your forgiveness." The Queen's head tilted slightly, and her scales shifted to include threads of purple, curiosity mixed with the formality. "I am listening, young human." Tommy took a deep breath, remembering everything he and his mother had discussed. "I want to explain what happened, but not to make excuses. My mom taught me never to talk to strangers because humans care a lot about protecting their children. When you found me and started asking questions, I got scared and used the words she taught me to use if a stranger tried to talk to me. And those words included calling me a..." The Queen's translator paused as it searched for the appropriate term in diplomatic language. "A Motherf word," Tommy said quickly. "Which I know now is really bad in your language. But, Your Majesty, I wasn't trying to insult you personally. I didn't even know who you were. I was just a scared kid following the rules my parents taught me to keep me safe." The Queen leaned forward slightly, and Tommy noticed that her scales were now showing more purple than blue. "You speak of these safety rules as if they are absolute commands." "Because they kind of are," Tommy said earnestly. "Human parents don't just suggest that their kids avoid strangers, we make it a rule because we love them too much to risk anything bad happening to them. Even if the stranger is actually really nice, like you probably are." "Probably?" There was something in the Queen's tone that might have been amusement. Tommy felt his cheeks redden. "Well, I mean, I don't know you very well yet. But my mom says you're fair and smart, and you rule a whole empire, so you must be pretty good at taking care of people." For the first time since the incident began, Queen Velterra's scales showed a flash of what Sarah recognized as surprise, brief streaks of silver running through the blue and purple. "You consider ruling to be a form of caretaking? Isn't it?" Tommy asked, genuinely curious. "I mean, if you're in charge of billions of people, don't you have to make sure they have what they need and that they're safe and happy?" The Queen was silent for a long moment, and Sarah held her breath. This wasn't going according to any script they had prepared. "That is an interesting perspective," the Queen said finally. "Tell me, young Thomas, what do you know of leadership?" Tommy thought about it seriously, the way he did when teachers asked him difficult questions in school. "My mom says good leaders listen to people and try to solve problems that are too big for any one person to handle alone. And my dad says they have to make hard choices that might make some people unhappy, but they do it anyway if it helps more people in the long run." "Your parents sound wise." "They are," Tommy said with the absolute confidence of a child who still believed his parents knew everything. "That's why I wanted to do more than just say sorry to you." The Queen's scales shifted again, showing more silver. "Oh?" Tommy held up his mechanical bird, which had been quietly purring in his hands like a tiny metal cat. This was a present from Ambassador Korthak. He told me it was made with technology from his homeworld, but designed to look like creatures from Earth. He said it was a symbol of how two different peoples could create something beautiful together. I see. And you wish to give this to me? No, Your Majesty, Tommy said, and Sarah felt her heart stop for a moment. I want to tell you the story of why Ambassador Korthak gave it to me in the first place. Because I think it's a very human story, and maybe it will help you understand us better. The Queen settled back on her throne, her scales now showing steady streams of silver through the blue and purple, intense curiosity. I will hear this story. Tommy took another deep breath and began. A few weeks ago, I was in the community gardens where all the diplomats go to relax. Ambassador Korthak was there too, but he was sitting by himself looking really sad. His tentacles were all droopy, and he kept making these soft whistling sounds that my mom told me later meant he was homesick. Sarah watched the Queen's face, or what she could see of it behind the alien features, as Tommy continued. Most of the adults just walked past him because they were busy with important grown-up stuff. But I went over and sat next to him because he looked like he needed a friend. I couldn't understand his language, and he couldn't speak much English, but I showed him pictures of my dog back on Earth on my tablet. Tommy activated his tablet and showed the Queen a holographic image of a golden retriever puppy playing in a yard. This is Bailey. He's my best friend back home, and I miss him a lot too. So Ambassador Korthak and I just sat there missing our friends together. The Queen's scales were now showing definite streaks of what Sarah recognized as emotional engagement, pale gold threads weaving through the other colors. The next day, Tommy continued, Ambassador Korthak found me again and gave me this bird. He told me through the translator that he had asked the station's fabricators to make something that reminded him of both our worlds, the metal-shaping technology of his people, but designed to look like the living creatures that I missed from Earth. Tommy activated the bird, which spread its wings and began to sing a complex melody that somehow managed to sound both mechanical and organic at the same time. He said that friendship wasn't about being the same as someone else. It was about understanding what made each other happy and trying to share that feeling. The Queen was very still now, her scales settling into a pattern Sarah had never seen before, swirling combinations of colors that seemed to shift and flow like aurora. Your Majesty, Tommy said, his voice becoming more serious, I think humans are really good at that kind of friendship. We're curious about other people, even when they're different from us. And, when we care about someone, we try to learn what makes them feel good and what makes them feel bad, so we can be better friends to them. And, you believe this is why your people seek alliances with other species? I think so, Tommy said thoughtfully. My mom spends all day trying to figure out how to make agreements that help everyone involved. Not just humans, but all the other species too. She stays up late reading about different cultures and learning about what they need and want. Sarah felt tears prick at her eyes. She hadn't realized Tommy had noticed her late-night study sessions. And, yesterday, Tommy continued, I messed that up. I treated you like a scary stranger instead of like someone who might want to be humanity's friend. I made you feel bad instead of making you feel welcome. And, that's not what humans are supposed to do. The Queen rose from her throne, towering over Tommy, who nonetheless stood his ground with his mechanical bird singing softly in his hands. Young Thomas, she said, her voice softer than Sarah had ever heard it, do you believe that apologies should be accompanied by understanding? Yes, Your Majesty. My dad says that I'm sorry doesn't mean anything if you don't understand why what you did was wrong and how you can do better next time. And, how will you do better next time? Tommy thought about it for a moment. Next time I meet someone new, even if they look different from me, I'll try to be polite and curious instead of scared. And, I'll remember that being different doesn't mean being dangerous. The Queen knelt down so that she was closer to Tommy's eye level, though she was still much taller than him. Her scales had settled into a warm golden color that Sarah had only seen once before, during a moment of genuine joy in the negotiations. Thomas Chen, the Queen said formally, I accept your apology. But, more than that, I accept your explanation of human nature. You have reminded me that your species' greatest strength is not your technology or your military capabilities, but your capacity for empathy, and your willingness to learn from your mistakes. Tommy's face lit up with relief and joy. Does that mean you're not mad at my mom anymore? And you'll still want to make the space treaty? The Queen's laugh was like crystal chimes in a gentle wind. Young diplomat, I think your people and mine have much to learn from each other. And I believe this alliance will be even stronger because of what you have taught me today. She stood and addressed Sarah directly. Ambassador Chen, your child has shown me something that 6 months of formal negotiations had not, the true character of humanity. I withdraw my objection to yesterday's incident and request that we resume formal talks immediately. Thank you, Your Majesty, Sarah said, bowing deeply once again. Do not thank me yet, the Queen replied with what Sarah was now certain was amusement. I have one condition. Sarah's diplomatic instincts immediately went on high alert. What condition, Your Majesty? I want young Thomas to attend the signing ceremony for our alliance. As an honored guest, representing the next generation of human Zephyrian friendship. Tommy's eyes went wide with excitement. Really? I get to come to the big important meeting? Indeed you do, the Queen said. But, first, would you do me the honor of sharing a meal with me? I am curious to learn more about earth dogs and mechanical birds. As Tommy chattered excitedly about Bailey and his collection of alien gifts, Sarah watched her 8-year-old son single-handedly repair 6 months of diplomatic work through nothing more than honesty, empathy, and the uniquely human ability to find common ground with anyone willing to listen. Later, as they walked back to their quarters, Tommy looked up at his mother with a satisfied expression. Mom, I think I want to be a diplomat when I grow up. Sarah laughed, ruffling his hair. I think you already are, sweetheart. You already are.